All right, guys, welcome to part 2 of our Christmas cranberry orange zest mead. It's about day 8, day 9 for our Christmas mead. We're probably at about 2 to 3% residual sugars left in there. It's not completely done fermenting. It's starting to slow, but we're going to go ahead and rack that. I have a vacation coming up. I'm going to be leaving in about a day or two to go on a cruise to Alaska. Pretty excited about it, but I don't want to leave that in primary because it's going to be sitting on the fruit. So we're going to get that out of the primary, rack it into a carboy, and let it finish the fermentation in a secondary vessel. Today we're going to rack it, press it, and get it into that carboy. So let me show you how we're going to do that. All right, we have our sanitized racking cane and auto siphon here, our sanitizer right there. And this is going to be maybe used a little bit later if we need to, that size anyways. So let's go ahead and get this started to rack. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to move our fruit over to our press. Again, not needed. If you're interested though, it is in the description below. There's an Amazon link for that. It is really good. It does definitely change the boldness of wines and really brings out the character of the fruit. This is the messy part. We'll let all that good juice drain in there. So we'll make a mess. Oh, if you could smell this, it smells amazing. That cranberry and that zest is just holiday in a bucket for sure. All right. There is our fruit. We'll put the lid back on our mead here, just so we're not adding too much extra oxygen in there. And then we'll go ahead and press this. This is a super simple process here. All right, now all we're gonna do is just reincorporate that mead right back into the fermentation bucket. All right, so there you can see our total yield here, 2 gallons. Again, I left a little bit more headspace than I normally would. I usually take it up to right here and right here, but I left a little bit more just because it's still fermenting with that 3% or 4% residual left. And then about 32 ounces in here, some headspace. There's our wine left behind, or I'm sorry, our mead left behind, and some gross leaves you just can't see. It's kind of swirling around in there. Cranberries weren't all that bad, to be honest. So these will go on the fermentation table, and they will sit for the next couple of weeks. They'll finish completely fermenting down to that dry point of 1.000 or less. And I will go on vacation, and I will check them when I get back, and we'll probably start the refining process. All right, so here we are about 2 weeks later. These have completely finished fermenting. They are at 1.000 specific gravity. They'll probably ferment a little bit further in the refining process and get below 1, but they're at least done for our purposes of racking to start the refining process. So we have our Christmas mead here. You can see what we're going to do. For those of you that this is a little bit of a newer venture for, this is going to be our gross lees here from the final fermentation here at the bottom. We're going to rack these into new vessels right over here, and we're going to start the refining process. And this time I'm going to go with super clear. Usually I would do bentonite and maybe bentonite and super clear for mead because honey can be hard to clear sometimes. But this, I'm going to just experiment just with super clear here, and I'll show you how we use that. But you can see here, this is just a recommendation of mine. Make sure you want to get a couple of different sizes of vessels here. And that's because I'm certain that we're not going to, these are 2 1-gallon vessels. I'm certain that I'm not going to get both of these filled up. At least I would be shocked if I did. And that's because we have those gross lees, which is going to remove some of the volume. So likely we'll probably get a 1 gallon and maybe 2 of these or 1 of these and almost a full one of this. So we'll see based on headspace what I feel like in terms of letting it refine. So we'll get there. All right, so for the second one, I'm going to show you from the top where the mead's at, that angle, so you can kind of see what I'm doing here. So the end of our hose is in our clean vessel down there, our sanitized vessel. We're going to put this in, started at the top. You can see we want to avoid any of the stuff here at the bottom, so we'll gently lower that down. Start this very slowly because the hose with these small vessels can sometimes fall out because they're so small, or so short rather. We're going now. So I'm going to keep this by hand all the way down. All right, now you're going to see me tilt it, and that's to avoid any of those gross leaves on the very bottom, and I'm trying to keep it at the very top of the mead, the very top of the surface. That's why you're seeing some bubbles there. because it's sucking some oxygen. And that's about as much as we're going to get out of that without getting too close to the lees. You're going to get a little bit of mead loss there, but not really. If you look at that, we want to keep that out of our mead so it's easier to clear. All right, so here we are. They're both been racked. Here's our 2 new vessels that have been taken off the gross lees. Here's our 2 old ones. You can see that's what was left behind down there. You can see I have both of the air locks off here, and that's for a reason. That's because we're going to start adding in our Kiselso and Cheeto-san. I just call it K and C because I can't ever say it. So what we're going to do is we're going to add in the K first. This just comes as one packet. I've just cut it with a pair of scissors. We're going to add this in first, and we're going to vigorously get this stirred in, which is why I have the airlocks off right now, because I'm going to use, I love these for stirring in these little 1 gallon vessels. I'll just hold my finger over this or my thumb, and then I'll shake it to get this stirred in properly. All right, so now we're going to take the first pack, the K, if you will. You can see here, when I have 2 vessels like this, and I'm going to split this in between, this is good for up to about 5 gallons, even 6 pushing, but usually about 5 gallons. I'll split the pack in 2. I'll just take a marker, draw a line in the middle, kind of eyeball it, put half in one, half in the other. Just an easy way to do it. If you wanted to get real technical, you could put it on a scale and weigh out the grams, etc., etc. But this is fine. It's never failed me. So we're going to pour that in half and half. Now what we'll do is shake these pretty vigorously. All right, so now what we're going to do after we added our K, our first packet, we are going to let this sit for an hour. So I'll set a timer for an hour, at least an hour. You can wait up to 24 if you have things to do or busy. Okay, so it's been an hour, and we're going to add the second pack here, the Cheeto-san. This is a 1 ounce cup of warm water that we're going to dissolve that in real quick. And then we're just going to split this between the 2 vessels here. So I will cut the corner off. Just going to pour this right into the water, nice and slow there. All right, just going to put a lid on it. This is just so I can swirl it and kind of dissolve that in that 1 ounce of water that we got there. All right, so the lids are off. Now what we're going to do is split this between the 2 vessels here. You can see I just made a little marker right there just so I know it's kind of halfway. The trick with Cheeto-san and the instructions say that you got to pour it slowly by counting to about basically like 30. So we're just going to make sure we get it in slow. And keep checking to make sure that we haven't poured over half. All right, so now we'll just put the lids back onto our 1 gallon glass jars here, nice and tight. And we're gonna let these sit for about the next 15, probably to 30 days. It really depends on how they clear. But what we want is absolute clarity. It takes a little bit longer for honey to clear, for mead to clear than it does wine. Usually wine will clear in about 7 days and we'd be ready to filter or bottle, but we'll look at about 15 days. All right, so it's been about a week, so you can see our mead is perfectly clear here. See my hand all the way through there. But rather than just the hand test, I do like to use a flashlight to make sure before I choose to bottle. I'll show you why. You can see that beam perfectly clear all the way through there. And that's going to highlight any things that are floating around, anything you don't want inside of your mead when you go to bottle it. But there's nothing in there right now, so it's perfectly clear. And you could bottle this up. So we're gonna, tomorrow, we will rack this into a bucket and we will do some back sweetening with some honey and get this into bottles. But before we do that, the night before, we're gonna add in our Candem tablet, 1 per gallon, and we're gonna add in a half a teaspoon of potassium sorbate, 1 per gallon. What that's gonna do is sanitize our mead because it's been racked a couple times now. And in terms of the oxygen that we've done into that, it's kind of lowered the sulfites in here. So we want to kind of boost those back up before bottling. So we make sure it has a nice long life against bacteria. And also with the potassium sorbate, that's going to prevent when we back sweeten it with that honey so that any yeast remaining in the mead, even microparticulates, is not going to start fermenting again inside the bottle and then kind of produce, it could produce off flavors. It could produce little floating yeast, for lack of a better term, throughout your bottle. Just doesn't look nice. But I did want to show you today, before I get to that, I'm going to do little bit behind the scenes here. You can see here if I back up, I have my filtering process set up here. So I'm going to go ahead and filter this. I always filter the night before. This is absolutely not necessary. Kind of behind the scenes. You don't need this. So if you don't have this, don't worry. But if you would like to see how to use something like this, please go check out my video on how to filter your wine at home with a home filter. This thing is awesome. It's a sterile filter. That's the only reason I use it. It pulls out all the microparticulates from the mead. I'm going to be giving this out for Christmas. I want it to be perfectly clear, which it is, but it will be even better slightly with this, and it'll just kind of clean it up a little bit. But it is perfect the way it is. This is how 99.9% of home brewers are going to have their mead at bottling. So this is just an extra. I just wanted to show you that I do that. All right, so I just wanted to kind of make sure we clarify here. I'm going to filter these two. Again, not necessary. Here's our 2 clean 1 gallon little vessels here, carboys if you want to even call them that. But just our 2 little 1 gallons here, nice and sanitized. Don't worry about the bubbles. Star San is just fine like that whenever it's in its diluted form. It's actually sanitizing as we speak. But if you're not filtering, which 99.9% of you are not filtering, again, go check out my video if you're interested in this. This is at the point night before where you would be racking this over into a new vessel and getting it off these fine lees prior to bottling. The reason that is because we're going to add in our additives. And when we stir that up or shake these up, we don't want to disturb all those fine lees down there. We want to keep them out of there as much as possible. So we're going to go ahead and rack this right into just like we did when we racked it into this container. You just rack it again into a new vessel, nice sanitized vessel. And that way you can add in some additives and we can shake it around and not have to disturb these lees. All right, we have some tools of the trade here. You can see in the background, here's our mead. This is, after I filtered it, you can see the headspace here, the loss and transfer there. You're gonna have the same loss, although you're not filtering yours like I did. You're gonna be racking it just normally into new vessels to get it off of the lees. You're also gonna have some headspace. And this is absolutely fine because we're only going to leave this overnight. So this process is the night before we plan to bottle. If this was not the night before, we wouldn't want to leave headspace like this for a long period of time. So this is a 24-hour process, additives in, bottle the next day, and get them in and squared away to start aging in the bottle. So let me show you some tools of the trade here. We got our 2 spoons that we're going to be, just like we did before, crushing 1 Camden tablet per, and then we're going to be adding 1/2 teaspoon of potassium sorbate to each. These are all sanitized. I have my wine thief here, or mead thief in this case. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to be taking some mead out of each vessel here. Scoot this closer so I don't spill it. And we're going to use this to dissolve our additives. The best way I found to get them completely dissolved and incorporated into the mead or wine or whatever I'm doing is just to use some of the mead or wine itself to dissolve that process. All right, so we've taken it up from the first one. Go ahead and put the top back on because at this point, remember, fermentation is done. We're ready for bottle. Oxygen is our enemy now. We're gonna go ahead and add in. And what's funny is you're gonna see, if you haven't done this before, you're gonna see the color change in this. But we're gonna shake it to make sure it gets fully incorporated. So 1/2 teaspoon. And it's okay that we have less than a gallon. It's give or take. So 1/2 teaspoon of potassium sorbate. And then we're going to add in our Camden tablet. We're going to crush it between the 2 spoons like we did before. Just make sure it's nice and crushed up, which it is. Put that in there. You'll see after I shake this, it's going to change the color in here. But it won't change the overall color of the larger batch. So we're just going to shake this up now. See, complete color gone. That's from the sulfites, the potassium sorbate, mostly the sulfite, the potassium metabisulfite via the Camden tablets. So we're going to get this nice and dissolved. I avoid at this point, I am a stickler with clarity, and so I avoid at this point adding anything into the wine or mead that could potentially not dissolve, hang around, stick around. And the reason that we're doing it this way is because what we want to do, add this 24 hours. This is the best way that I have found to let the potassium sorbate and the Camden tablets kick in, settle, and incorporate fully into the mead or wine or whatever I'm making at that point before I add any kind of back sweetening. What I have found is, and then I will get 0 fermentation in bottle and 0 lees in the bottle as time goes on. What I have found is if I add potassium sorbate at the time of back sweetening, sugar, honey, what have you, fermentation always kicks into some slight small degree. And over time, I will get even the slightest amount of leaves that will float in the bottle because I feel like the potassium sorbate, at least my theory, didn't get a full chance to settle in, if that makes sense. Because right now these are dry, so the potassium sorbate will be completely running the show inside of this vessel. And then when I go to add in 24 hours later, go to add in my back sweetening, my honey or my sugar, in this case, honey, this is ready to rock. It's fully incorporated and it's like, bring it on. No fermentation happening here. So that's why I like to do it this way. We'll go ahead and add that in. Don't worry about what it looks like here. By tomorrow, this will settle out and be completely clear still with nothing at the bottom. All right. Get that all in there. We're going to do the same thing with this one. But before we do, we're going to go ahead and give this one a nice shake. Take the airlock off real quick, set that to the side. This way we can cover the hole with the thumb. We'll still make a mess, I'm sure, but to the best of our ability here. Nice and tight. Cover the hole up here and just get that potassium sorbate and those candum tablets completely incorporated. Nice shake. All right. Slowly remove the thumb lock here. And you'll see we'll get some carbonated action there still a little bit from the addition of the sulfites and whatnot. We'll go ahead and set that off to the side. Put our airlock back on. And this will sit for the next 24 hours. And then we will do our bottling tomorrow and add our back sweetening, which is going to be our orange flower honey in this case. It's going to be great. So let's fast forward to that. Remember to do it to this one. I'm not going to do it and bore you guys. Same thing, 1 tablet, half a teaspoon of potassium sorbate, shake it up and get it incorporated. Let them both sit until tomorrow morning. All right, guys, it is my favorite day, bottling day. We're going to talk about what we have here and the tools that we use that are kind of spread out, but let's get started with the most star of the show. We have our mead. As you remember, for you, it's a very short period of time. For me, it's about 24 hours. Our additives are in there, nice and clear, ready to bottle, so that's important. We have our honey that we're going to be using to back sweeten. This is the McCoy's Pure All Natural Unfiltered Raw Orange Blossom Honey. It's a mouthful, and it's expensive. This is expensive. This is like $40 to $50 on Amazon, but it is amazing honey. This batch is for Christmas. It is for friends and family, so I kind of went all out with making this mead with this particular honey. So normally I wouldn't use it as expensive here. We have our tasting glass. These are my favorite tasting glasses by far. I'm going to mention some shout outs to things that I really like. They're linked down in my description below. This is one of those. It's perfect for swirling, getting a perfect nose. You can see the curvature of the glass there. Puts it right up into your nostrils. Love these things. We have the drill here. What I'm going to be using this for is on the stirring wand. We are going to be racking our mead into our 5-gallon bucket here that has been sanitized. By the way, everything has been sanitized. But we're going to rack it down into this bucket, and this is what we're going to add our honey into so that both of these go into the same batch. And we're going to use this on the stirring wand to stir up our honey into our mead and incorporate it nice and slow so we don't have too much oxygen, but still this is really helpful. I don't even warm up the mead, honestly, because this is so helpful. Let's talk about the rest of the tools here. All right, well, not tools, but maybe items. So we're going to talk about the bottles just for a second. See if I can get them in focus there. There we go. All right. So first off, we have 3 different sizes here. One of them is just going to be this one. This is my friend's. He gave me some of his mead in his bottle here. I'm going to return the favor and give him his bottle back with some of my mead. So that's what that is. Then you can see that I have regular size bottles. These are just like you'd buy at the store, 750 milliliter bottles. I have about 4 of these and 1 of these. So 5 big bottles and 10 small bottles, which should be about what we get out of this. The small bottles, I absolutely love these. They don't get enough credit. I think you can buy them on Amazon in 12 packs for fairly cheap. They're also linked down in my description. The reason that I really like these is for people that are going to be tasting your wine, or maybe you're just gifting it to them, you know that they don't drink that much, they're not going to drink a lot, maybe a whole bottle is a waste. This is 2 perfect full-size wine glasses, pretty big full-size wine glasses. They can taste it, they can give you feedback, that way you don't waste a bottle if they don't like it, or they can just, you can give out a smaller bottle and you're not wasting bigger bottles on people that, you know, maybe not will uncork that and finish the whole thing, so to speak. On this, what they're sitting on is the bottle tree. This is an investment. If you are going to, a cheap investment, by the way, but if you are going to be doing any type of wine, mead, and be making a fair amount of it, invest in this. This is a super cheap. You can get it on Amazon. It's in my description. Extremely helpful for the situation right here. And this top portion, I believe, does not come with it. You got to buy them together, or you have to buy it together or separate. But you press down on this, and you can see that star sand shoots it right into the bottle. Take the bottle right off, stick it on here, boom, it drips down to the drip tray. It's extremely easy. Otherwise, you're washing these by hand individually in a sink, and it's ridiculous. Here's our corks. So our corks are important. People don't give corks enough credit. These ones are my favorite ones. I believe these are also linked down there. These are from Portugal. They have a long shelf life. I think 8 to 10 years, maybe plus, depending on how the bottle goes through in temperature and whatnot. But these are awesome. They're not conglomerated. They're full corks right from the cork tree and straight from Portugal, whereas corks originated and come from, if you didn't know, Portugal. And a little bit of an advanced behind the scenes. I'm not going to go over this much. This is for a different video, but this is for a pH tester. I always test my pH of my wine or my mead at bottling. And that's because I want to be able to see the shelf life, longevity of it in terms of pH. A very high pH, so let's say 4.2 to 4.5 high pHs, they are more susceptible to spoilage, as well as acidity with pH is a kind of a scale there. So the higher you have in pH, the lower your acid will be, that tartness or brightness in your wine. The higher the acidity, the lower the pH will be. So just kind of take that into account. I'm not going to get too much into it and bore you guys. Different video, but I do test it. I expect this to be about 2.9 to 3.4. We'll give it that range. And I also use that for tasting purposes, so I can kind of see where that acidity is if I want to adjust the acidity up or down and things of that nature. So it's great information for the advanced wine or mead maker. Over here are some tools that you guys have seen before. You should be used to and know what these are. The only thing different here is we have our bottling wand. This is awesome, super cheap. Right there, that little device on the end presses in. And this allows us, once you push this into the bottle with the hose on the back of this, this just lets the wine go right into the bottle or the mead. It is awesome. I'll show you how to perfectly fill up your bottles with this. And you can see, you're probably wondering, why do you have a hydrometer and this glass tube out here again? We already took a hydrometer reading of our mead, and it was 1.000, which means it's dry, right? Yes, that does mean that it is dry, but it can actually ferment further while it's clearing up and going through that process before we add our potassium sorbate and our cadmium tablets and whatnot. So it may actually be drier now than 1.000. And I want to get this closest to the actual alcohol by volume because I will put that on my labels whenever I label my bottles, give them out to family, but also for my own knowledge. So I can see whatever that hydrometer reading is and where I can shoot for my next batch. Was it too much alcohol on the tongue or in the flavor, or just in general, was it not enough? So it just helps me in general make a better batch next time. So always check your hydrometer reading at bottling. If you really want to get nerdy about it, try testing your pH. But let's go ahead and get into the bottling. All right, one thing I wanted to point out real quick, I love these fermenters, and that's because they have so much information on the side, but one of that is how much volume you have in here. That gives you an indication of how many bottles that we're actually going to be able to fill. So per gallon, the basic rule of thumb is you will get 5 large size or 750 milliliter bottles, or 10 of these, and these are, let me see, they're 357 milliliters. So you'll get 10 of these or 5 of these. So here, we're at about 1 3/4 gallon. Lasts about a quarter gallon to clearing and filtering. So about 1 3/4 gallon. So give or take, we're going to get about 5 large bottles for the first gallon, and probably about 4 to 6 of the small bottles for that rest remaining there. So just something to point out. All right, so at this point, all this really is going to be sweetening, back sweetening. And remember, no more fermentation because we have potassium sorbate in here. We're going to be back sweetening our mead to our personal preference. This is kind of the best part. But what I know I'm going to start with, just from experience, again, everything's sanitized. I don't usually use a scale. I just kind of use a 1 cup measuring because that's just what I do. But I'll use a scale for you guys just so you can kind of see in grams wise, and it's not perfect, obviously. Whoop, past it. Exactly how much honey is going in. So we're going to start here. I'm not going to warm this up. Some people do, your choice, preference. I can incorporate it very easily just by using the drill. And the drill also helps to get rid of any kind of residual CO2 that might be in there. There shouldn't be by now, but I move pretty quickly. My batch is quicker than some. Sometimes there's a little bit of residual. And this is really nice honey. It doesn't like, or I guess it's not as hard to work with this somewhere. So we're going to start with a full cup here, which I get that this is kind of a liquid and we're measuring in grams here, but close enough. You'll get the picture. 332 grams is what we're going to start with to incorporate into this. Put the honey straight in to our bucket here. All right, there's our stirring wand. And all we're going to do now is just stir that honey up. I'll see if you can get a good picture there. Now what we're going to do is just, I forgot to mention this, I just use a sanitized turkey baster here because the depth here is hard with a wine thief or a meat thief to get any of that. So we're just going to take a kind of a little bit of a sample here. There we go. Beautiful looking. All right, just a barely a little bit of residual sweetness there, which is what we expected, but you always want to start slow. You don't want to overshoot it. So let's go, I'm going to go ahead and add another full cup to that. So this time around, 309 grams. All right, so I'm going to go with about 150 grams more. It's just right there. I don't want to overshoot it here, but it's getting right where it needs to be, about 150 grams. Let me see here. I'm going to go about 125. There we go. All right. So we're going to do our final test here. Minus a little bit of bubbles from the incorporation. It looks really good. That's going to be the same if you have this and you shake it in a 1 gallon to try to get that honey incorporated, or however you're going to stir it. It's still going to stir up a little bit of agitation there, but let's go ahead and taste this final. I'm glad I added that 125 grams. And that's where we're going to keep it. So we're going to go ahead and get it bottled, and then we'll get it into a glass, and I will do a real tasting with you guys. All right. Just wanted to point this out. We've had our corks here sitting in Star San, so they're getting nice and sanitized. It also, these are almost impossible to get in if they were dry, so they need to be wet. And we're going to go ahead and get our auto siphon in here, get our bottling wand into our bottles, and get everything, and I'll show you how to fill it up perfectly. All right, so here's that bottling wand. We're going to stick it in to the bottle. My wife is working the auto siphon up there. So here comes the mead. All I'm doing is pushing down. If I was to pull up, it would stop. So just pushing down. Fills up rather quickly. This is a full-size bottle of wine, 750 milliliters. Again, these are linked down in the description below if you're interested, the bottling wand. The nice part about it is that as it gets up to the neck here, I'll show you how to get it perfectly filled up. We're going to go all the way to the top. Remove the wand, and it leaves just enough space there in the neck for the cork, just perfect amount. And that's you can replicate that over and over with every bottle that you do. But it's pretty handy. So let's get these filled up, and then we will come back to corking. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get these corked now. If you are doing a lot of home brews where you're corking things, this floor corker, inexpensive. I think it's like, well, not inexpensive. It's like 70 bucks maybe. But this is awesome. Takes all the hassle out of it. You just put it on the bottom platform here, push down, it's spring loaded, puts it right up there. Don't even have to hold it. Pull down on the lever, squeezes the cork, pushes it right into the bottle. This is also adjustable for your depth up at the top. There you go. Nice corked bottle of mead. We like to make our bottles look professional, especially whenever we're giving them out to friends and family. So I will always take some Star San, spray the bottles down from top to bottom. You're gonna have, stickiness from putting it into the bottle, maybe some of the mead dripped over the side or whatever. Get all that sanitized. Nice little towel here. It's nice and clean. Get that bottle polished and get it ready for the label and ready for the rack. All right, so there you have it all bottled up, just like we said. You got 5 of the regular size 750 milliliter bottles and 8 of the 357, the little smaller ones. So welcome to Santa's Side Piece, Sweet and Tart Mead, Cranberry Orange Zest, Orange Blossom Honey, 13.6 ABV. I'll read you the back. So not your grandma's holiday drink. This mead is bursting with tart cranberries kissed with orange zest and wrapped in the silky sweetness of orange blossom honey, sweet, tart, and a little naughty, like Christmas after dark. Serve chilled or slightly warmed and get ready to jingle all the way. So there you go. There's our Christmas mead. This is how we will present it and give it out. I believe that's a beautiful color. The label came out really funny, really cool, and just kind of quirky, so to speak. The green seal here looks really nice. So the next steps here, what we'll do is I'm going to let these sit just like this for the next 24 hours. Some people will actually lay them on their sides in a bucket or something like that to make sure they're not going to leak. I've never had that necessary issue. It's very few and far between. But what I have had is you'll have some residual gas, CO2, what have you, just from the agitation of the mead or wine or whatever you're doing. There just may be some additional gases there. And what happens whenever you put this in a rack right away, or sometimes when you lay it over and you don't give that air a chance to escape a little bit through the cork, because these corks will allow just a slight bit of air to get through. That's how they age. If you don't allow that, and it can actually push through your cork here in terms of like leaking out or a little bit of residual, if you will. In my experience, if I leave them up like this in 24 hours, and just let anything kind of settle out and then rack them after that, I have no problems with any of the mead or the wine escaping. Maybe 1 out of 500 corks will actually have some kind of a leakage issue. So there you have it. All right, guys. Now for a proper tasting here. First smell, always smell it first, see what the nose is. Interesting part is I can still smell the honey very strong. Usually sometimes in meads, this happens, and those of you that make mead, the honey smell can actually get kind of erased and you just kind of get the fruit smell to come through. But the honey is still very present here. Cranberry there, a little bit of that orange, but very small amount of the orange. All right, that is pretty good. So immediately on the tongue, right in the front, it's going to be that punch of the cranberry, tart, acidic, kind of make you not pucker, but you get that mouth-watering feel from the acidity, which is really good. A little bit of the orange zest, kind of mid palate, and then a pretty like medium finish, I would say. So it doesn't just leave the mouth right away. It kind of sticks around just for a little bit, but it doesn't seem like it's too long. This is really going to get better with age, and I love that. That's one of the best parts of making your own brews is you get to age it and taste it 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, and what have you. So it's pretty cool. Follow along, and I'm sure I'll do some tasting in this next year. With that being said, if you guys got some benefit from this video and you really enjoy this kind of content, please follow along, hit the subscribe button, hit that like button. It really does help the channel out. I'm just growing a small channel. Also, leave some comments below. Is there some particular brews you'd like to see in terms of wine, mead, some fruit combinations, some different stuff? And I'll do some more advanced videos and get into those for those nerdy home brewers who would like to see those, and maybe some shorter videos that are just a little bit to the point when it comes to making the wine or the mead. So thanks for watching. Until the next time, cheers.